Whether you are currently on your work hours or on a break or after a long day, we truly appreciate you being here and being part of this great community. So my name is Folasha. I'll be your host for today's section, and I'm really excited to be here with you all. Insightful conversation. So to get us warmed up, I would like to talk to you guys about today's section. So for today's Nigeria Community Series, this platform we are going to be talking about the identities first, building secured access with zero trust. And as organizations continue to adapt cloud technologies and architectures, it's beginning to put it's very architectures or security becomes more critical in organizations. And one of the key ideas in modern security architecture is how access is managed and being protected. So understanding this concept can actually help us to build more secure and resilient systems. So amazing speakers today joining us today to help us break down this and guide us practical insights around this topic. Moment. Thank you so much for Oluwaseun Dayo for joining us on this section.
I
Can you
welcome everybody
hear me?
to this session. Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me as well?
Uh, yes, very
Yeah,
clear.
so I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, just screen two. Okay, I'm currently sharing my screen now. So thank you, Folashade, for that introductory session. That was a very great one, and I welcome everyone to this session on building secure cloud access with zero trust. It's great for you all that have joined today to be part of this Azure security series. Yes, so like Fola Shade mentioned, it's going to be a discussion because I know that we are going to have experts among us currently attending this session who also have, those who are trying to come into tech, trying to learn what it looks like or what exactly does zero trust mean. So it doesn't matter your level of understanding. The most important thing is that make sure you put your mind to this session and feel free to ask questions. The question and answer session is there. So feel free to hear your opinions, your concerns, your observations, your questions, and we'll be more than happy to attend to all of this just to ensure that you are able to catch something interesting from today's session. So, like Folashade mentioned, in the era we have now, organizations are rapidly moving their applications, their data, and services to the cloud. Gone are the days of a complete traditional setup system. Employees can now work from anywhere, and this actually started in 2020 during the outbreak of COVID-19. And a lot of organizations still run a hybrid work system. This is because they discovered that uh, your productivity at work for some kind of jobs does not really mean, or it does not really depend on you being present, physically present in the four walls of your organization. So they give the flexibility that employees can work from anywhere, or for those running the hybrid setup, you can actually be in the office twice a week and work from home 3 times a week. So employees now work from anywhere. They can work from home, they can work from office, they can even work on the move using different devices like laptops, tablets, and mobile phones to access sensitive information that belongs to the organization. Now, because of this shift, the traditional way we used to secure IT environments could no longer work as effectively as it used to be. Because in the past, organization relied heavily on network boundaries. If a user was inside the corporate network, they are generally trusted because they believe that, okay, you are connected to the organization network, firewalls and VPNs are used to keep outsiders away. If you are not a member of staff of that organization, you cannot connect. And once anyone is inside the network, they often add a broad access to systems and resources. However, the cloud has changed that model. It is now identity focused, no longer network focused, because applications are no longer inside a corporate network 247 as they used to be. Employees work remotely. Devices may not always be owned or managed by the organization. And this means that the network is no longer the main security boundary. And this is where the concept of zero trust security model comes in. So zero trust as it has a simple it has a simple it has a simple principle, which is never trust but always verify. You know, even as humans in our relationship, in our day-to-day activities, we should, it is recommended that we live by the zero trust basic principle. You do not trust anyone just easily. You must have, make that person go through some checks for you to be able to say you can vouch for this person. So because of the current work model, the cloud presence, we no longer have employees bound to the network control anymore. So there has to be additional control implementation to ensure that every device, every identity that is attempting to access the organization resources have been verified. So instead of you assuming a user or device should be trusted simply because they are in the network, every access request had to go through the verification process. Authentication first before authorization. So this system will continuously check who the user is, what device is that user using, what's the location the user is connecting from, and whether the request appears risky or not before authorization is done and before access is granted. So at the center of this whole approach, we have identity as the focus, because everything about zero trust now is on who who does this, who is trying to do this, who has done that. So that's the reason why we have identity first, building secure cloud access with zero trust. In this modern cloud environments, identity becomes the new security perimeter. It has shifted away from the network that we used to have, because before now we have the traditional security where you have everyone confined within the network. We have the network perimeter as the security boundary. There is this VPN centric access, and a static security is not dynamic. But now with zero trust, you don't trust anything by default. It has now shifted from network bound to identity bound, and it is VPN centric access. It is now an identity based. We need to know you. You need to prove your identity, and there are continuous verification, because there are a lot of tools now that that every user can use to prove themselves. So it is a continuous growth, not static. So in this session, we are going to focus on identity first approach, to zero trust. And this means that we'll start by securing the user identities before expanding protection to devices, applications, and data, because all of this as well are identity. There are actually about 5 categories or types of identity, not only the user, but I do call them supportive identity, because the user is still the one, at the forefront of it. So by the end of this session, we'll have a clear understanding of what zero trust security means in a very simple term, and why identity is the foundation of modern cloud security, how organizations can secure access to cloud resources, key identity security capabilities that are used in Azure environment, and the practical steps for implementing a zero trust access strategy. We'll wrap up the session with a very short demonstration just to take us through what's how it is to establish a zero trust security. So even though we have zero trust as many pillars, identity is still the starting point, because it's going to answer the question who the user is, what device, what application, and if the behavior is risky or not. So I'm currently sharing my screen. Is my screen visible? Okay. So we have the core identity security controls in Azure. I have them on my screen. I have just 4 of them on my screen. These are the core identity security controls that we have in Azure. And we can also say they are the Microsoft Entra ID capability, because when we are talking about identity first, we are talking about the zero trust. We cannot erase the Microsoft Entra ID, because the Microsoft Entra ID is the identity environment. That's the identity platform in Azure, and it evaluates everything that has to do with identity activities or operations. So when we are talking about the capabilities of this platform, okay, what can this platform do? If you say the Microsoft Entra ID is the identity platform, what is its capability? How does it help in ensuring that zero trust is enabled, or a zero trust framework is implemented? So the first capability is the multi-factor authentication. A lot of us must have at one point or other used a multi-factor authentication solution, but we may not know that that is what it is called. So at any point in time, you are trying to access an environment, and after you must have entered your login credentials, be it your email and password, then it still requests you for an additional verification method, maybe by calling your phone to send you a code which you are going to enter on your screen, or by sending the code as text message, or asking you to scan your face ID, or asking you to thumbprint. Any of this could be another level of authentication. So this is what we called a multi-factor authentication. That's what we call a multi-factor authentication. It is the first capacity or capability of the identity, which is the Microsoft Entra ID. And the reason for the introduction of this is because passwords alone cannot sustain the security of an environment when it comes to access. A lot of us are so nonchalant or careless that We end up in one single password to access all our platforms. We have the same password on Facebook, the same platform, the same password on Instagram, the same password on LinkedIn, the same password to our emails, the same password, even if possible, to all our bank applications. And to make it more risky, these passwords does not follow the password creation standard. They are so easily to be guessed. A lot of us would use maybe the name of our first child, or the name of our partner, or our date of birth, something that people could easily guess. And the black guys behind the screen that own password, they know all of these techniques. So the moment they are able to catch your profile on one of the social media, let's say Facebook, they follow up with your posts. From there, they know the name of your partner. They know your history. They know your date of birth. They know what you love most. They know what you don't love. And they take note of all this information. So when they are ready to ask you, they try all of the information they have. So if your password falls into any of these options, they take over your platform, and they try it on all the environments they know you have. So password alone are not sustainable. They are not enough. So when there is an additional level of authentication, like something something you have, which is your phone, and something you are, using something you are as a multi-factor authentication is more stronger, because even with something you have, which is your phone, at the point of receiving a code, your phone may be with someone else. If it's someone that has been targeting you, following up with you, trying to get close to you, you wouldn't know that the person is trying to steal something from you. And at that point that the code will be coming in, the person stylishly take your phone from you in the name of checking your gallery or doing something that you could not even, think of. So it is not so much protected. But when you use something you have, your face, it's not so easy for someone to just tell you, could you please scan your face on this phone? You want to know why. So that is a stronger level of protection. So Microsoft would report if there are any multi-factor authentication blocks that are over 99% of account compromise attacks. So in an organization, when there is a high report of compromised accounts, there's going to be a report. That means that organization does not follow the security standard. And by the time you check, you may find out in that organization there are 5 global admins. A larger percent of the employees have one admin right or the other, and they don't have a multi-factor authentication enabled on their accounts. So apart from you using password, biometrics, or getting a code on your phone, there are other multi-factor authentication solutions or controls that we have, which are having an authenticator app, or using a YubiKey, which you are going to connect to your device, and SMS, which is getting the code via text. So that is all about the first capability of the identity platform on how to secure or enable a zero trust on identity access to sensitive resources, in fact, to the organization resources at large. The other capability we have is the conditional access policy. I call this a policy engine because there are a lot of policies you can configure using the if-then structure. It is also the brain of the zero trust in Azure, because when you implement a conditional access policy, you can actually grant access to a user, but that user has to fulfill a particular policy. If yes, then access will be granted. But if the user does not fulfill, those rules, then access is not granted. This is basically what a conditional access policy is. So the rules could be based on your location, it could be based on the device, it could be based on the user, him or herself, that is the username, the email address, and it could be based on some other factors. The policy condition for conditional access includes a user and group, location, like I mentioned, device compliance, application, and risk level. So if the admin has configured that only compliant devices can access a particular resource, if your device does not fall into the compliant category, you cannot access, even though you are a member of staff in that organization. So that is another capability of the identity platform. Another one is the risk-based access decision. So this would basically dictate if there are any risk signings, any kind of anomalies. Take, for example, let's have 4 stars from your organization that are working from the UK. The system already has a record of their IP address, the location IP, and their device IP. And just all of a sudden, you discover that a login attempt from the same device IP is trying to access your organization resource from a different location IP. So that is a risky attempt. So if you have your policy in place, it is going to detect this and flag it. It calls the attention of the admin in charge to check that out. Of course, the attempt would fail, but you need to analyze it. And part of your assessment of that risk is to communicate with the user, which you know, and confirm if it is actually the user that has engaged in, an anonymous trip and is trying to sign in from an unknown location IP. Otherwise, maybe the user or the staff has been robbed or has been scammed or has been impersonated. So when we talk about risky signings, we are talking about impossible travel, anonymous IP, as I've explained, malware that are linked to IP addresses, or a credential leak. So in this case, this is also connected to conditional access, because when you are configuring a conditional access, you can also configure user risky signings. So at this point, you are going to force the user to go on and perform an MFA operation. So it could be a face scan, it could be a thumbprint, it could be a voice input to unlock that access, or you require a password reset on that account, or you block the access. So any of this can be done to take care of a risky based access decision. Another capability we have on the identity platform is the privileged access management. These admins with permanent privileges could be dangerous. Microsoft also recommends that in an organization, you should not have more than 2 global admins. When there are more than 2, there is a problem. So 2 global admin is actually recommended. The second global admin could also be a billing administrator, or you have one global admin and one billing administrator. That's my own recommendation, because with this, you are able to monitor the use of that privilege you've given to them. So for us to control having users with global admin rights for permanent duration or a longer duration, the privileged access management solution resolves that. So with this, you can enable what we call a just-in-time access, JIT, or a just enough access, JEA. So when we say just-in-time access, you are only giving access to that user for a particular period of time. And while you are configuring that access, you already included your justification to why you are giving that user that access. It could be an access for 14 days, it could be for 1 week, it could be for just 1 day. Perhaps the user needs the admin rights to carry out some activities within the organization. You have to put the justification there, and it has to be approved by another admin of the organization. So the moment the duration elapses, the access is withdrawn. Another feature of the PAM is the JEA, which is the just enough access. This works with what we call the least privilege. The least privilege. So when you are assigning permission based on least privilege, you are not giving more than what the person needs. You are not giving more than what the person needs. You are only giving that person the permission that is enough to carry out the task that has been assigned at that particular time. For example, you needed one member of your staff to take over creating user accounts, changing their passwords, ensuring that their accounts are enabled. That's all what you want that user to do. And then you go ahead to give a global admin to that user. That is not JEA. That is not least privilege. What you should assign to that user is simply a user admin role. And you are giving a user admin role because you needed that staff to create user accounts in addition to the password creation, changing, and modification. If the role is limited to only passwords, changing their passwords, just give the password admin. That's okay. Give the password admin. So with this, you are following the standard or the framework of implementing a zero trust. You are following the standard of implementing a zero trust framework in your organization. So when we talk about the capability of the Entra ID, which is the identity platform, we'll mention MFA, we'll mention CA, we'll mention risk-based assets, and then we'll mention the PAM. So this is all about that's all about the capability. Then there is one that I'm going to add to it, which is device trusts. So actually, device trust is not a feature of the Entra ID per se, because it is fully existing in what we call the Intune environment. So the Intune environment is what houses everything that has to do with devices. However, when we are talking about implementing zero trust framework, we'll talk about device. I mentioned earlier that there are 5 basic kinds of identity. Device is also part of them. So in this case, what do you do with your device? You make sure that the devices are compliant. When you are defining a compliant device, you mention the operating system. You give or you state what operating system the user should have on their PC before they can connect to your organization resource. If you say it should be a minimum of Windows 10 Pro, so any user that does not have Windows 10 Pro or later OS cannot connect. You can go as far as defining the RAM. The minimum RAM should be 16 gig. A user with 8 gig RAM is not compliant. And the list go on and on and on and on. So this is also how you can also implement your zero trust framework on your devices. And so let's look at the 5 pillars of zero trust. These are also they are also the entities that you can apply your zero trust policies to. So we have identity. However, instead of this identity, I'll prefer to read it as user. The reason is because I used to put all of this into the category of identity: users, data, and I will explain why. Data, application, network, and then device. So when I am teaching and I'm talking about identity, I make reference to these 5. The reason is because in an organization, these are all the 5 major entities that we protect, that are prone to attack, that are prone to threats, that are prone to risk. An attacker can attack your organization through a user, through a data, through an application, through a network, and through a device. Your device is connected to the network. There is an application on that device. That application contains data, which will be handled and managed by a user. So you can see how the workflow moves in circle. So when you are thinking about implementing a zero trust framework, you have to put in mind these 5 pillars. They are very, very important. And the beautiful thing is Microsoft has a plan for each of these. You can manage them properly. We have the cloud apps portal, we have the security, the Microsoft purview, we have the compliance purview, we have Microsoft Entra ID, we have Intune, we have Azure security. All of these solutions are there in the Microsoft environment to help you process a proper and standard security solution for your organization. So we have below, just what I've explained previously, a basic access flow where we are talking about identity as the new security perimeter. It has moved off from network. Before, it used to be network. Before, network used to be the security perimeter, but not anymore. It is now identity. So when a user is trying to access a resource, the user had to go through authentication. And when the identity is verified, then there is a policy evaluation to check the risky behavior around it, to confirm that, okay, this authentication is valid, check the device, check the application, check the location, check everything has to be checked following the policy that has been applied on that user. Then when all checks are done, this is actually what is done in the GRC domain. Checks are done, and then the system says that, okay, this can be allowed. Then a access decision is made if it is going to be a yes or a no. So that is what it looks like with the basic access flow. So, okay, we already discussed is the core identity security controls in Azure, MFA, CA, IP, the PIM or PAM. This could also be the privilege access management, which is PAM. So either of these would, do the same and device trust. So now we'll be wrapping this session up with a real world case. And that is what I have on the screen. You can see the letterings. I hope they are not too small or tiny. And all right, so here is a scenario here. And this real world case here is about you securing a remote access to Microsoft 365 using the Identity First Zero Trust framework. So what is the scenario here? We have a mid-sized consulting company that has employees working from multiple locations. The locations could be the office, it could be home, it could be customer sites, it could be public areas. And these employees will be accessing sensitive resource from the organization. Maybe, one of the staff is on trip and he or she has to join a project meeting to discuss the the ongoing projects within the team. In that case, the employee would be accessing their SharePoint documents to review files, be reading emails, maybe connecting through the organization teams, and looking through their project planner application or Outlook. And this user can be sitting somewhere in a long distance cafeteria. That is the scenario. So in this case, the company now experienced several password spray login attempts. When we say a password spray, you are guessing, you are doing a password guess. And the organization needs to strengthen the security without making it difficult for employees to work remotely, because there are some security control you would implement that would make it difficult for your employees to work remotely. So you also need to put into consideration business productivity, business continuity, and your employees' productivity when thinking of security controls to implement in that domain or capacity. So in this case, the organization decides to implement an identity first zero trust using the Microsoft Entra ID. That is the identity platform. Now, take notes as their consultants. The goal is to ensure that only verified users would access the company resource. That is one. The second goal, which is the objective, is to ensure that risky signings are blocked. Then finally, access is based on identity and device trust. So in this case, we may put the device trust in a category of devices that are compliant. So as a security consultant, if an organization has put this objective before you, then you need to think of a strategy to meet up, to help that organization fulfill their objective. So how do we start this? I'm going to be sharing my Azure portal environment. Is that what you can see? Let's confirm real quick. Okay, good. All right. So this is the Azure environment. It's a mother platform. I think it's mother platform because it has a lot of sub resources that use to build solutions, implement solutions, and bring data to real life. So our business here with this Azure is the Entra ID. is the identity platform. So I'm going to be going into the Entra ID environment and following the scenario we had already. In my own strategy plan as the consultant for that organization, the first thing I'm going to be doing in my implementation guide is to enable multi-factor authentication for all the users. So how do I do that? Right here, I'm in the Microsoft Entra ID, the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. So if you are completely new to tech, you don't have an Azure account, you don't even know how to get here. So I would encourage you to sign up for Azure. Sign up for Azure by simply doing this. You can just open your browser and sign up for Azure. When you type it in your browser, it suggests a lot of information on how to do about it. Like this is what we have here now. When you go onto the Azure sign up page, it's going to load you to an environment where you can sign up. You can sign up as a student, you can sign up as a professional. When you do that, once you that page, you just follow the instructions. It's a step-by-step instruction, and it's going to ask you information. You provide it. Yeah, so it says I already have an account. That's because I already have an account. But if okay, let me see if I can use an in private window that would not catch my account, so we could see what it looks like signing up for Azure. And when you sign up for Azure, you'll be given, I think, $150 worth of subscription for the first 30 days. And with these, I think I can't actually do. Let me see what I can. Okay, let me try this. So for the first 30 days, you have a free subscription, to try as much examples, as much tests, as much deployments that you can. I'm just going to be skipping this to avoid distraction. Yeah, so and after the first 30 days, you have the remaining 11 months to access some resources for free. But for the first 30 days, you can have access to creating virtual machine, creating resources, deploying virtual machine, deploying some resources like network security group, doing a whole lot of complex tests. But after the first 30 days and you feel like the solution is something that would work for you or your organization, you go ahead and switch to pay as you go subscription. And the beautiful thing is you only pay for what you use. That's the reason why it is pay as you go subscription. So, and if you feel you still want to run more, platform, you can still do some few things like creating a user account, assigning for you to assign license, you would need the premium 1 or premium 2 Azure subscription, but you can get that also on trial. So most of all the licenses in Azure and Microsoft, you can get them on trial for the first 30 days. And this would allow you to explore all the capabilities of that license, of the resource. Then you can decide what step you would be taking next. So that is that. And once you are able to sign up for your Azure, then you have access to the Entra ID. And for you to have access to this admin center, you should be a global admin. So what you are creating is not limited to Azure. I would also encourage you to sign up for your Azure. You sign up for a Microsoft 365 tenant as well, because they are integrated. And most of the things you'll be doing as well, you would be needing the Microsoft 365 tenants as well as you progress in your study. So this is the Microsoft Entra ID Center, the identity platform. And like I mentioned mentioned earlier, strategic plan to help that organization meet their objective. The first thing I'm going to be doing is to enable MFA for all the users that are working in different locations, because that is the scope. It is not for all. It is not for all the users. Only for users that are working in a far distance. I'm going to bring on the slide again here. So only for users that are working in multiple locations. So that is the scope. When you are deploying a solution or you are building a solution, you need to have it in mind. All right. So that's the first thing I'm going to be doing. And so how do I do that? How do I enable users for for the multi-factor authentication? I'm going to scroll down here to users under the Entra ID. So this is going to take me to the users dashboard. I can see the list of all users, including guests in my organization. And these are also different options you can carry out on each user. So in summary, everything we can see here are the capabilities of the user platform, the user dashboard. So let us assume that the 5 users here are the users that are working from different locations: Alex, Diego, Grady, Henrietta, and Isaiah. So I'm going to be assigning or applying the multi-factor authentication policy on these 5 users. How do I do that? I'm going to click on per user MFA. And this would launch me into the multi-factor authentication configuration dashboard. So there are 2 things here that I would show us. Here we have the users pane, then we have the service settings pane. The users pane here give you visibility into the number of users that you have in your organization, and it also show you the status. So here you can filter the status to see only users that have MFA enabled. So already Diego has MFA enabled, right? Then we can also filter to see users that have MFA enforced. None of them has it enforced. So you may want to ask that, okay, what is the difference between enabling MFA for a user and enforcing it for a user? An admin, when you enable a user for MFA, that means you already put that user in the queue. You are telling the system that, okay, user A is already in queue, has been enrolled for MFA, but the registration is not done yet. So the moment you enforce, you already registered that user. So a scenario where a user is enrolled or enabled and not enforced, when you enable MFA for a user, anytime the user wants to sign in, the user gets a prompt that tells him or her, your organization requires more information. And the user can say, okay, I don't even think you can skip it anymore. If you don't register, you would not be able to proceed to the next step. So, but if you already enforce it for that user, the user will only go ahead and put in maybe their phone number for the MFA or whatever, means they want to work with. So that is what it looks like. So what do we have on the service setting platform or dashboard here? This is where you configure the operation of that tool, which is the MFA tool. The first one here is the application password. So there's a behavior when you enable MFA for, you can choose if users should create a separate password to access non-browser apps. So when we talk about non-browser apps, we're talking about the applications that we already have installed on our local PC. One of which is your Outlook. You have PowerPoint, you have Excel, you have Planner, you have Power BI, and more. So when you select the first option to allow users to create a password, that means they would not be able to sign in to their non-app with the regular password they used to have. They have to create an app password, which means there's a different word for their online application and there's a different password for their offline application. However, they may choose to use the same password for both locations. But if you don't want your users to go through that, and it is not your choice, it is not your decision to make, you have to follow the security framework of that organization. If the framework insists that there has to be an app password, you have to follow it and enable it for them. That is one configuration. The next one is trusted IP. So section, you can skip multi-factor authentication for requests from the following range of IP subnets. So when you define a range of in this box, any user that is signing in from that IP range would be exempted from going through the MFA. So you have to be very, very, very careful when you are doing this. It has to remain a confidential information, because when that IP range leaks and the hacker gets hold of it, it is easier for them to create something within that range and bypass MFA into your organization. That is one phase. Another phase here is the methods that are available to users. So this particular operation has been moved to the go to authentication methods dashboard. But
Hi,
I'm still going to
Olujo.
explain with what we have here. Are you saying something?
Yeah, we need to like round up.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So sorry about that. All right. So for this particular phase here that we can see on the screen, you may choose your users to sign in with call to phone, or text message to phone, notification through mobile app, or verification code from an authenticator app. Then the final configuration here is to configure or set a duration which the device would be remembered on the trust platform. And this means that sometimes when we are trying to sign in, we get a prompt that asks us, okay, for how many days should I skip you going through authentication or authorization? And then we might check the box for 14 days. That's because a configuration has happened in the back end that has trusted our device for 14 days. After 14 days, you need to repeat that process. So I think we'll still need to come back to this session for us to continue. This is where I'm going to be stopping for today. And we've only treated one out of the plan, out of about 5 plans that we have to enable this organization fulfill their objectives. So there's going to be another, I'll be coming again in another session to complete this particular topic. So thank you for having me once again. And a big thank you to everyone that has joined. So when I'm coming again, we'll be rounding this up, and I'll also be taking us through how we can map the whole of this solution to the NIST framework. So I'll be handing over Shade. Hello, Falashade. I can't hear you if you're speaking.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Oluwaseun. We really appreciate that for the insightful and engaging section. Please let's appreciate our speaker in the comment section. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Oluwaseun. I hope everyone found today's section understanding of what it takes first approach when building success assets with zero trust. Even though we're not able to like cover all the whole aspects, and but at least you have a glimpse of what how important. So thank you all so much for joining. A very big welcome. Thank you to you again, Oluwaseun, for taking the time to share your knowledge and your experience Azure Nigerian community. To truly appreciate it. And also keep an eye on the Azure Nigeria. I was actually thinking maybe we could check if there are any questions from any
Questions.
from the
Okay.
people. Yeah, I'm trying to choose before we like round up on that. Okay. I have any question, I can drop it. I don't think I can get any questions yet. So let's just give about a minute. Then, if no questions, I believe maybe it's people that later.
Okay.
So let's just
Yeah,
give a
they should feel
minute.
free to drop their questions, even maybe not now, after they might have, watched the videos. They can drop their question in the comment section. When I get the prompts for that, I'll go over and answer. And yes, we look forward to another session to complete this series, this particular topic.
Yeah, exactly. We have this currently live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So if you have any questions, you can just drop it on the chat. All right, just wrap up the question section. Thank you all so much for joining and for community channels for announcement upcoming sections and events. We have more exciting conversations and many opportunities coming up. So with that, we have come to the section. Thank you all once again for joining us and have a wonderful evening form. And we look forward to seeing you again in our next series section. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Falashade, for hosting this session. And thanks to Azure community. Thanks to everyone who made it a date to be here. And let's try as much as possible to bring people in into the community, because there is a whole lot to learn, to gain, to equip ourselves with. We are family, and yes, definitely we'll continue to grow and expand. Thank you so much.
All right. Do have a good evening and good day to everyone. Bye.